Great Monday. This is King. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. The days threw me off a little bit. So great Monday. This is King. I'm joined by my co-host Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
I'm doing well, King. Still have a lingering. I'll wind up front here. Still have a little bit of a lingering cough, so I'll try not to cough in your face as we're talking. I'll turn away. But otherwise, I can't. Well, actually, I could complain, but we'll get to that.
All right. Well, today this week we're doing our show today instead of our normal Wednesday because of scheduling conflicts. So hope our listening audience is still with us or you catch the replay. So with that being said, Reggie, what's your spiritual energy number today?
No, it's a 10. I mean, I admit I had to choose it because I've had this lingering respiratory infection and a cough that just won't go away, and that just makes me tired. And then I just remember my perspective of all the suffering in the world, and I have a cough, and so my spiritual energy is by choice a 10, even though my physical energy isn't where I would like it to be.
Well, I join you with that. I'm a 10 as well, and I have my physical and emotional challenges to try to prevent me from being a 10. But as I stated on many occasions, I see no value in choosing a number less than 10, and that's what we're doing. You choose your spiritual energy number, and I believe you match your energy and your behaviors to it as you go throughout the day. So I'm a 10 with that, and I'll go into my gratitude. So I'm grateful for my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have sound mind. Grateful for a mother who's alive and still has sound mind, still has love, energy, and still able to experience her physical form here and her love here on this planet. I'm also grateful to be able to be on this podcast, which we had some challenges technically. This one wasn't sure we was going to be able to do it because they've been recycling the power where I'm at a couple times and all the way up until 9:25. So hopefully we get through the entire podcast and they'll have a power cycle, hopefully. And just looking forward to the show. So what's your gratitude moment, Reggie?
Yeah, so I'm as always grateful to be sitting in a house that I rent with a roof, and nowadays in November, the heat that keeps me relatively warm. Have a refrigerator with food that I've chosen that's readily available to me. Indoor plumbing, and generally all of my basic needs are taken care of. And then I get to have conversations with you. I get to read. I get to write. I get to teach things that feed my soul. So I'm grateful for all of that, despite my whining about having a cough.
Well, I'm glad you're here and you were able to persevere and you've gotten better. And so with that being said, why don't you lead us into our topic for today's show?
Yeah, so as we know, the presidential election is decided. Donald Trump defeated Kamala Harris in the Electoral College. I believe right now it's about 300 and it might be 312 to 226. Don't quote me on those numbers. And by about 3.5 or 4 million popular votes as of today. And that's with about 95% of the vote counted across the country. So that's, so it's not going to change significantly. And what I want to do is just really briefly review what the two campaigns stood for leading up to Election Day, and look at the prospective reasons for or meanings of the American population. Approximately, I don't know if it's about 52% to 48%. I think those are roughly numbers. Selected Donald Trump, and to note that the voter turnout, eligible voters is in the general vicinity of 65% of eligible voters, which is relatively high in American history, which I want to comment on as well, because that basically means throughout American history, only about 65% of American citizens who are eligible to vote bother, which is, exercising the entry-level responsibility for somebody living in a democratic republic, as we do. So that breaks down to, generally speaking, about 79 million Americans who could have voted, either were unable to, because some voting districts make it harder for people to vote, or chose not to for whatever reasons. So we're not a beacon or a great exemplar for how a democracy can work. But that said, let me just go through. I'll start with the Republican Party, which I'll call the Trump Republican Party or the MAGA Republican Party, because it's not the Republican Party of even 10 or 15 years ago. But basically, they've attempted to exclude the voices and participation of certain U.S. citizens when it comes to voting. They have perpetuated an infantile lie that the only way they can lose an election is if the election is rigged or fixed. They don't worry about election integrity if they win, because they think they're supposed to win. They promote permitless open carry gun laws around the country. Right now, there are 27 states that anybody can have a gun, can carry it, and they do not have any permit or licensing or training required to do that. That's in 27 states, and this party promotes that. This party denies that climate change is real. It says it wants to make America great again, but it doesn't clarify when it was great and for whom. According to the British medical journal, The Lancet, the way that the Trump administration managed or mismanaged the COVID pandemic caused as many as 400,000 unnecessary deaths in the United States. About 40% of the deaths could have been avoided. This party lies and repeats lies as a daily strategy. They insult, demean, and dehumanize their opponents as a matter of course. They believe that women should have fewer rights concerning their bodies than men should have concerning theirs. They oppose labor unions and believe in the neoliberal trickle-down theory that if enough really wealthy people get really wealthy, the wealth will trickle down to the rest of us. As a note there, George Herbert Walker Bush, when he ran against Ronald Reagan, referred to that as voodoo economics, the trickle-down theory. And it's been proven to be just that. And they see biblical rule as a good idea. They think that all Americans should be Christian and that the Bible should be basically the rule of the land, despite the First Amendment and the separation of church and state. So that's the winning party. The losing party has worked for decades to include all American citizens in the voting process. They have historically trusted the proven integrity of election officials in all 50 states. In other words, when they've lost close elections, they've never said, well, it was because it was rigged, including in 2000, when 537 votes separated George Bush and Al Gore in Florida. They continue to fight for common sense gun legislation so that not everyone can carry a gun, a loaded weapon, openly in public, even though 27 states allow that today. Rarely, if ever, dehumanizes their opponents. They disagree, and occasionally they are unskillful, but it's not a regular dehumanization of their political opponents. They honor science, They believe in climate change, that it's real. They fight for women's right to exercise their control over their own bodies for medical reasons. They support workers and labor unions. And they both support freedom of religion and the separation of church and state, and do not agree that the Bible should be the ruling document of the United States. So that's just the difference. I mean, in bullet points, basically, obviously, between the two parties. And the American electorate, by about 4 percentage points, chose the MAGA Republican Trump Party over the, in this case, the Kamala Harris Walls ticket. So a lot of, and this is the last thing I'll say, like I'm talking a little bit too much. In the last week, all of the pundits, from Fox to Breitbart to New York Times to CNN to MSNBC, all of them, written media, broadcast media, social media, everybody is explaining what happened and what it means. And some people say some things that in my reading make a little bit of sense. But most of them look at the election result through their ideological eyes, in terms of what I've read. And none of them, with, again, a couple of exceptions, people like Heather Cox Richardson, the historian, is one. Interestingly, Robert Reich, who was Clinton's Secretary of the Treasury, I believe, and with whom I don't always agree, he came out with a pretty insightful kind of integrated view of a lot of moving parts. But, one columnist in the New York Times basically said, now we know America's real view of Black women, as though Kamala Harris lost simply because she was a woman and she was Black. Somebody else wrote, a white liberal guy wrote that the election results prove that we live in a racist, misogynistic, homophobic nation. In other words, labeling those who voted for Donald Trump as racist, misogynistic, and homophobic. And some of them, I'm sure, are. I'm sure there are some people who fit into some of those categories. But all of these are reductions of a very complex process and result to little narrow viewpoints that miss, in my experience, much bigger pictures. So that's enough fodder to begin with. I'd love to hear what you think. And just to be completely upfront, I voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I did not vote for Donald Trump. I would never vote for Donald Trump because I've known who he is since I was in college in the 70s in New York. He's about 8 years older than I am. And he never was somebody I would want to have any control of the United States government for a variety of reasons. So just so we can be, upfront and transparent, I try to look at the results with an open, broad view, but it's not as though I don't have an opinion about who I wanted to win. So it's all yours.
Well, thank you for choosing a wonderful topic. Of course, it's definitely the topic that impacting the world, at least until the rest of the year. We're going to be looking at the reasons why. Because everybody couldn't believe that folks would vote for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, being as outwardly racist, the comments they've made, misogynistic, things of that nature. And like you, listen to some of the pundits after, and everybody's fighting for different reasons. Depending on who you talk to, I've heard from, she didn't lean into Biden policies enough she didn't separate from Biden enough. She was too pro-Israel she was not enough pro-Palestine. So, she was leaning too more to the Republicans, where she didn't lean enough over to the Democrats, or she was too woke. So depending on who you hear from, the perspective, either she didn't go the way that they felt that she should. So it's everybody's playing, as they use a football term, Monday morning quarterback. You know, my personal take, I think, to your point, I think it's a combination of all those issues. I think that I saw a 60-minute interview last night, and they were interviewing a white woman from a town in Pennsylvania, that's Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, that's known to kind of, however they vote tends to be how the election goes. So they voted for like Obama in 2012 and 2008. Then they voted for Trump in 2016. They voted for Biden in 2020. So depending on where they vote, tends to kind of go to the election.
Hmm.
And this white woman they interviewed, she actually owned a restaurant, a diner. And she said she started off her background. She started off as a waitress at the diner. Now she owns it. So they was asking her. She was saying, "I've been a Democrat my whole life. My mother raised me as a Democrat." She always told me, "The Democrat is the only party that supports the poor man." So this year she voted for Trump, and then the news host gave her, well, the economy has gotten better. Inflation's gone down. Uh, Salaries have increased. But he asked her the key question: "Have you felt that?" She said, "No, I haven't felt any of that. Most of the people I talked to haven't felt any of that." And I think she really hit the nail on the head where she said that the way I look at it, me and my friends, we don't have the luxury to worry about the woke issues, the justice issues now. The economy is suffering. And I think that's where it's a combination of both. I think this time around, white folks who normally would have voted for, change and being, as they call it, justice, if they're filling their pockets, they're going to vote for what's in their best interest. And I really can't blame them for that. I can understand. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I got to understand that perspective. You got to vote for your pockets is, regardless of what the news tells you. Because finally now this month, gas. I don't know in your area, but gas has finally dipped down below $3 in that area. It's about $2.95, and $2.90s area. I haven't seen that. I believe the entire time Biden's been in office. But personally, I believe that she lost mainly because, and the one other thing I want to point out too, I was watching this progressive podcast show called the Turks, uh,
The Young Turks.
Young Turks. There it is, and they're making a comment that, like you said, they showed a quote from Joy Reid from MSNBC saying basically what you said earlier, but somebody had reported it, that she was saying that America wouldn't vote for black women. And they took offense to that. Their logic was, well, America voted for Obama twice. Obama had 80% approval rating in his second term, so America is really as racist as Joy is trying to make it out to be. That wouldn't be the case. Now, my pushback to that is, and I've been studying these outliers, lately, as Malcolm Gladwell pointed out. And to me, Obama was an outlier. Obama was this, at that time, wonderfully articulate, extremely charismatic gentleman who can unite people and create that movement kind of feeling. So he wasn't just an ordinary black man that's having to be running for office and people really loved his policies, his positions. He was that extreme outlier. Harvard grad. Obama pretty much had to be as perfect as he could be in order to get that vote. Where you look at Kamala, she wasn't. She wasn't extremely charismatic. She was not somebody that folks felt good to galvanize behind. She was, at the most part, just sanity, that we felt that, okay, she's saying, she's speaking hope, she's speaking unity, and she doesn't have all these radical ideals about what direction the country should go in. And more importantly, she's not Trump. Right? She didn't separate herself from Biden enough. I agree with that analysis, because when it came time for her to really make a stance on that, or at least give any kind of indication where she stood, she didn't really do it. So I do believe it's a combination of both. I believe that maybe the country's not ready for a woman to be elected president. Then if you add the fact that she's black on top of that, I think that has some basis there. I think if it was going to be a woman to be elected president, they would have to be an outlier like Obama, somebody who's just phenomenal on a whole different level and that can galvanize and bring people. And see, what my personal assessment is when Cheney and Mitt Romney ran against Obama, they ran against a movement. People thought there was a movement on the Democratic side. And I think that Hillary, as well as Kamala, ran against a movement with Trump. See, that's what Trump brought. He brought a movement. You galvanize people along a movement ideology. That gives a different energy and a different excitement. And Kamala was never able to get a movement behind her. Like I said, people really looked at her as a corporate Democrat. Most progressives didn't really like her. Again, it was more like, okay, we can accept her. Everybody was excited about her initially after Biden announced that he wasn't going to run again and he nominated her. There was excitement because it was a change. It was different. It was, oh, wow, okay, it's new energy. But as we got a chance to really listen to her campaign and really see how she was running it, then people got less excited. I don't think she was able to bring out those masses from that side. But, what really shocked me, I shouldn't say shocked me, but it was really interesting, I would say more importantly, was just, and that's what I really hate about our mass media, is how they continue to talk about how dumb Trump is. He's so dumb. He's so silly. He's so ignorant. And all these derogatory terms about, and instead of accepting the fact that here's a man who, and I don't think that, to my knowledge, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you have a better understanding of historical facts and figures than I do. I've never seen a person or read about anybody that's has the ability to be what Trump is. And what I mean by that is Trump has the ability to be supported by racists. So whether he's racist or not, that's debatable. But his main supporters are definitely racist. Look at David Duke, look at all the Proud Boys, and those folks. That's their man. For them to have that kind of strong support behind Trump, there has to be something there for them to feel that way. But he has the ability to be supported by racists and insult women, black people, Muslims, gays, and still was able to get them to vote for him. Now, that to me is something that needs to be studied. They can't just be dismissed as something behind it. No one has ever really been done that. David Duke had just really run. He wouldn't have got any of those support from any of those individuals. It'd been clear. No one would have clearly voted for David Duke or any of the Proud Boys. But Trump was able to, he gained more black men support this time. White women voted for him much stronger. So it wasn't, they didn't feel the misogyny there. So to me, that's what really needs to happen is folks need to really stop being biased by their hate for Trump and really understand what his power and what his attraction is. And that was one of the things that came out during the 60-minute interview as well. The woman said she felt connected to Trump. She felt Trump understood her. Now, we can argue and say that's not true and Trump's not going to do anything for her, but he has put that in people's minds. They see themselves as Trump is fighting for them. Again, I'll close by saying this. I personally think that it came down to, if you look at Trump still represents that last vestige of white supremacy. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to hold it for you. And I'm going to fight for your rights. And I'm not going to let this country shift to this completely diverse, anybody can win at any given time with a black, white, gay, male, female. That's not going to happen on my watch. And I believe that is the crux of the situation. And when you combine the economy, combine the wars, all those other folks who may have been leaning toward Kamala if we weren't at war, the economy had not been as bad, inflation had not been as high, then maybe in different circumstances she possibly could have won. But I just think that the timing was perfect, just like COVID. I really believe Trump would have won had it not been for COVID in 2020, to be honest. I don't think Biden would have won. I think that COVID was that thing that came along and people saw how bad Trump handled COVID and they just really wanted to change. And Biden represented that change. So I know I've kind of spoke all over, but again, like I said, I conclude by just saying that I think Trump showed America where we really are, bottom line. I think people have aspirations of where they want America to be, but Trump showed that this is where America really is right now. And until we really get to the point where, and I really believe we really need a third party, like you, I will uh, uh, announce the fact that I voted for Kamala. I voted for Democrats pretty much my entire time since I've been voting since I was 18. And I've been in every term more and more dissatisfied with the party. And more have been told to vote Democrat just because they're not Republican. And how can you get excited about that? You know, how can you be motivated to do that? How can you feel excited about donating, advocating, sharing the word, wearing bumper stickers, any of those things? So I definitely believe the Democratic Party took the black vote for granted, took the one last thing I want to point out before, and I'll mention some other things in my next segment as well. I think one of the biggest mistakes most people make when it comes to the Hispanic vote is the same thing they do with the black vote. Black votes is definitely showing that it becomes less and less monolithic every voting cycle. And so it's going to get to the point people can't say black vote anymore. You can't say collectively the white vote. People understand that there is a huge diversity in the white vote. So they don't say the white vote. But they don't say the Hispanic vote. Like all Hispanics are going to vote in one particular area or a high percentage. And they show that it did not. And what you've seen over the years, Hispanics have shown to be, depending on what country they come from, you group Hispanics together, they have a racist tinge to them. A lot of these racist organizations are led by Hispanic men. So you can't sit here and say, okay, all Hispanics are going to vote one way or believe that they were going to vote Democratic just because the fact that Donald Trump is talking about doing mass deportation. And listening to a lot of Hispanic folks being interviewed, the ones that I know, and it's similar in the black community as well. Once you reach a certain economic status, you don't necessarily see yourself aligned with the poor and dealing with their issues. So Hispanic individuals who've made it in this country and who's doing pretty well and are here legally, they don't see themselves connected to the ones that are illegal and feel the need that I need to vote in their best interest. So to them, they're illegal. They should be out of the country as well. And that's what I believe Democrats didn't. Again, we talk about a lot of things that Democrats didn't do, but I think that's one of the reasons. A lot of people felt abandoned by the party, taken for granted by the party, and then they want to give a protest vote. I think all those things culminated into the perfect storm for Trump to win. And not only Trump winning the electoral college, as you stated, but also winning the popular vote. And then the Republicans winning the Senate. Has it been confirmed they won the House yet as well? You must be on mute. I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I did. I muted myself when I was coughing. Yeah, so the Republicans, I think, as of this morning, need 4 more seats, and the Democrats, I think, need either 12 or 14. So the House is probably going to stay Republican.
All right. Well, yeah. So that's my initial take. I jumped around quite a bit, but that's my initial take.
Yeah, no, I love a lot of what you said, and I want to zero in on 2 things that really stood out for me. And one I think is really important because it's something you and I have been talking about for 2.5 years, and it's our conversations are based on my 2022 book, Healing America's Narratives, and one of the components of that healing process, we talk about shadow, which I'll get to, but one of my primary, I'll say, biases, whether I'm talking to a cashier at the supermarket or people in my family or whatever, is adult development. Like, we have developmental worldviews that differ from each other, and earlier worldviews don't see as much as later worldviews. So we're not saying they're better or worse, but the average 2-year-old who has a me-centric view of the world, those, when they're in that age, they say, no, 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 me, 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 and they just want what they want. And that's a necessary developmental stage for all humans to go through it. All right? Most don't stay there. So the shorthand you and I have been using to look at developmental levels or stages is me-centrism. I only care about myself. When you graduate from that, it becomes us or group centrism, where I care about my group or my groups. Typically, we have more than one group we care about. That could be family, could be religion, could be colleagues at work, a lot of things, political party for sure. Could be sexual orientation, all of those. You graduate from that, and very few people on the planet, much less the United States, very few people on the planet, tiny percentage, really live in the next level of development, which is all of us, or human-centric, where I really identify with humanity. And when a baby dies in Baghdad, it's as sad to me as when a baby dies in Baltimore or Brooklyn, because I care about all humanity. Now, a lot of people believe in that and can articulate it or espouse it, but that's not really where we live. And then the last one, where virtually nobody lives, is identifying with creation or the universe. So those are the 4 steps. Now, I want to bring that back to another, to what Donald Trump is really good at doing, and especially in the last month or 2 of the campaign, what they did a really good job with, which was a lie. I hate to smile when I say that, but it wasn't true. It was a real distortion. It was horrible. But the 2 primary ads that appeared, and I saw these when I watched the World Series, which broke my heart as a Yankee fan. And then I've been watching some other things on television up to Election Day. And the 2 themes that they just hammered home with television ads and social media ads were: Donald Trump cares about you. And they're speaking directly to the viewer. Donald Trump cares about you. And we already have proof that he really doesn't. That's beside the point. And then Kamala Harris cares about them. So can you hear the developmental move there? It's really distorting and zeroing in on the us against them move. And the them that they accuse Harris and all the other Democrats of being for were: 1, illegal immigrants who cause, and the border needs to be controlled, the border needs to be resolved. So just want to say that before I finish this thought. But it's not a Biden Democratic border problem. It's been a Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Reagan, and all of their Congresses border problem. It's never been resolved by any president. And now it's, an us versus them thing. The vast majority of Americans are not in any way affected by illegal immigrants. Those on the border definitely are affected more, whose towns live close there. Absolutely. But you see these horrible images that were photoshopped of bad, mean-looking, criminal-like, dark men playing the racist card. Those are the illegal immigrants, and they're going to come and they're going to eat your dogs and cats and kill your children, all that kind of stuff. That's one. And then the other them were trans athletes, and they had this one image of this huge like distorted. It looked like a man who had become a woman, and he looked like he was 7 feet tall in a basketball uniform. And then there's these little white girls on the team as well. And, Kamala Harris is in favor of that thing. I'm not even going to say person, because it was created, competing against your daughters. So, a perfect, dishonest, manipulative manifestation of us versus them. And there are some Americans who believe that shit, who don't see that that's just scare tactics. Because if you look at school districts and athletics across the country, the issue of a male who has transitioned to female competing in a female sport in the CYO or in high school, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm pretty sure it's less than 1%. That's ever been an issue. But people are scared of it. All right. So that's one. So the us versus them thing was impeccable. The Republicans just created these ads. And for me, it was, if it hadn't been a presidential election, it was like cartoonish. It was like a Halloween ad, both the immigrant one and the trans one. Second, underlying that, for decades, people who have paid attention know that one of Donald Trump's mentors when he was a young New York real estate heir was Roy Cohn, the disbarred, discredited attorney who had worked with Joseph McCarthy in the Red Scare communism stuff back in the 1950s, who was homophobic and gay and who died of AIDS. And he taught Donald Trump basic lessons that you use the court system. You just spend your money on lawyers. You use the court system. If you settle a case, say that you won. In other words, don't say you settled, say that you won. And if you need to, you lie about it, and you never back off from the lie. I'm not making that up. And you can find the source material on that. So Donald Trump lies. He never backs down or apologizes. Anybody can prove, somebody please prove me wrong. I've never heard him back down or apologize about anything. He bankrupts people by staying in the court system and continuing litigation. And his delay taxes in litigation, with the help of the United States Supreme Court, allowed all of the cases against him to now go away because he's a president-elect of the United States. So masterful, again, at us versus them. We're going to make America great again, but only for you if you vote for me, not for them. And the them is the Democrats, trans people, gay people, non-Christians, who am I leaving out? And immigrants. So it's a real masterful manipulation of the truth. And it's another piece that led into his winning the presidency again. So that us versus them thing is a real big deal. And it's not going to go away in our lifetime. I'll put a pin in it there.
I've been doing some additional studying to really put some form of logic understanding around where we are in today's world. And not just with the election, just where we are, period. Elections to me were just an indication of what I've learned as a term, And I'm sure it's a term you're familiar with. And I think that's what we're suffering from, not only in the United States, but in the world itself. The United States is just a micro of it. And that's mass psychosis, And from what I've learned, mass psychosis, also known as a psychic epidemic, is a phenomenon where a significant portion of society loses touch with reality and embraces irrational beliefs and behaviors. This collective delusion can lead to societal breakdown, violence, and acceptance of harmful ideologies. And for me, that sounds perfectly where we are right now, because that's what the Republicans put out. They put out this fear. They put out this thing, so people are dealing with it from an anxiety standpoint of the immigrants are coming here, as you pointed out before. This trans gentleman now is going to be playing sports with our daughters. Fear. Again, immigrants are eating our dogs. Fear. They're coming over here and they're going to rape us. Fear. So these things are going to be triggering to the point where anyone from the other side, as you say, them, folks who represent them, they're speaking about it from a context of, well, we gotta love everybody, we gotta embrace everybody, and this other party is saying, well, no, I'm going to protect you from them and what they're bringing over here, or what they're bringing to societal, and how they're going to break the norm of American fabric. And you're dealing with folks who are working 9-to-5 jobs, who are concerned about losing their jobs, who are seeing their industry totally be replaced by technology. And you don't have time to sit here and figure out what's real and what's not. You trust in the media. And the media does a bad job, or they continue to do the job of, to me, of the power structure of helping stoke those fires of fear. And now you got people who are expected to go and make a critical decision based on critical thinking that's full of fear, full of anxiety, and they're going to vote in the interest of someone who's going to protect them. Kamala didn't come across as a protector at all. I mean, she didn't really come by and really, the only thing she really made a strong stand against, that for sure, is that she's for reproductive rights. That's it. That you can definitely say definitively, I know where she stands on this issue. She stands purely for reproductive rights. And to me, a lot of women voted for Trump. A lot of white women voted for Trump. I think black women were probably the only demographic that I've seen that didn't really vote for Trump as far as an increase in numbers, right? So when you combine all those things together, you're dealing with a society that's dealing with a mass psychosis of just, and we talked about it on several different shows, false information, propaganda, lies. There's so many lies out there. You don't know what is the truth. And like I said, the media has now become a parody, or you just watch sports. If you watch sports and you watch a sports analyst, it's the same structure. You get folks that get around a table and discuss, just so they talk about sports and give their opinion now, not their critical analysis of the game, but just their opinion. This player is bad. This player doesn't play as well. He's lazy. He's whatever their personal biases are about these players. They make the same kind of statements watching the political analysis. They give their personal opinion. They give their statements that are not necessarily true. So Democrats, to me, when you're going to say you're the moral party, but then you show immorality in your decision making, you show lies in what you're saying, then yes, you can create false comparisons. Now, of course, you lean into a Democrat, you're going to say, yeah, a lot of those comparisons are false. Trump is lying on a different level, January 6th, and all those things. But America has shown to have a very, very short memory. If it's something that's 3 or 4 years removed, you can't go back there and get people riled up about something that happened 3 or 4 years ago. Now, Trump definitely wouldn't win a re-election, if you go back to January 20th, 2020, and, the election was in March of that year, no, he wouldn't have won. Because everybody was emotionally connected to that time. They were still feeling ways about Trump. But, again, as time happened, people, as human nature, emotions and energy dissipates over time as far as anger is concerned. It's natural. It's going to dissipate. So people no longer became angry with Trump. Then you begin to forget how you felt during that time. And like I said, the economy coming in, and everybody, I mean, people were talking about the price of eggs, and I've heard different, you know, progressive people who have their podcasts talk about how, again, that was idiotic. That the price of eggs is not really going up for most people. It's like you can't debate people on what they feel. You can't tell someone, the price of eggs is not really going up. You know, without really having an understanding of where this person's coming from. It's like, again, if your son tells you I fall down, I hit my knee, and then this happened a lot when I was a kid. We played football or whatever, and if you got slammed to the ground, the kids would say, you land on the ground and you hurt, obviously, because you're being tackled by a bunch of kids and you get hurt. They're like, get up, you're not hurt. Suck it up, And so you just have to get up and deal with that pain. And that's how the media and all these other people who are telling other Americans, you're not really dealing with no pain. Just man up. It gets better. See, no one should tell you, no one should have to tell you the society is better. You should have to be told that. You should feel that. You should feel that when you go out and buy gas, when you go out and shop for groceries. Like I said, I know for a fact that, and having to go back and work a job for a while, which is a very humbling experience. I haven't worked for a job in 25 years, and going out to buy lunch, you can't buy a meal for $10 anymore. There is no meal buying for $10 or less. You can buy a sandwich for under $10, and if you add chips and a drink, you're paying more than that. So you can't tell me the economy is getting better when I'm feeling that right there, that there's $10 doesn't carry nowhere near as far as it used to. And that's just a very simple part, other than, let you go eat some obvious bad food like McDonald's is what they're advocating for. But, these are the health issues. But my point is, that's where I see where we are. We're dealing with a mass psychosis. And because of people feeling the pain of the economy, people are tired of the wars, and they do seem endless. The Democrats didn't have any solution for that other than, I'm going to keep my policy. This very, humble statement toward Israel was she's going to pretty much ride with Joe Biden's policy toward that, which I believe most Americans didn't agree with. These two where we are with Trump. And not just with Trump. Like I said, the Republicans are winning the Senate. But let me wrap up my statement with this. And again, I'm all over the place because just flood of emotions and reactions. Part of me is kind of glad he won. Yeah, I didn't vote for him. But the reason I'm saying that is this. See, what I've been more afraid of and still more concerned about is what comes after Trump. And that to me is J.D. Vance. It's like had Trump lost, I believe that it would have tore the country up even more. And then they're going to get rid of Trump because Trump is just a symbol. And now they're going to choose someone like J.D. Vance who doesn't have all the baggage that Trump has, the lawsuits, all the issues with women, all those things. You got someone a little more polished, someone who can be respected a little bit more, and someone's much younger. And see, to me, they don't have to roll that version out just yet. So now we get a chance to get the Republicans in office. And what's going to happen, the Republicans are going to do what the Republicans are going to do. And most of the people are not going to be happy with that. And what's going to be created from that is this new person who hasn't been identified yet that's going to unite the people. And we're going to go through the cycle. Now, do I believe democracy is over? Do I believe that the Republicans are going to come in right now and just dismantle everything and we're not going to have elections anymore? I don't. I don't believe it. I don't think that's going to happen. I could be shocked. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised if they actually implemented it. But again, I think people need to be woken up. It's like we're at a stage where you're going to have to fight for what you believe to be just and holy. It's not going to just come automatically. It's not going to come because we want it to. It's going to come because we bring it into existence. We force our opportunity to come. Then it's going to come. So I believe Trump winning, the Republicans are controlling all the legislators, House, Congress completely. Now we get a chance to see how they govern. We've already saw it before when they weren't able to dismantle Obamacare, but I think they're going to be much more deliberate. They're going to be much more intentional in their actions. And I think it's going to create a backlash. And this is where I believe the metal and the heart of the American people is really going to rise up in like 2 years from now. We're going to see where we are right now. And what I pray from this is that we get another party. Hopefully, the Democrat Party can, we can get a third party that can really grow from this. Because even, I believe it was Michigan, Jill Stein won 30% of the vote. Kamala won like 15% of the vote. So I'm hoping this protest vote, and I hope it shows the Democratic Party that they can't just be still ran by corporate Democrats, but then still trying to say, I understand and appeal to the masses of poor people. I think that they have to change that messaging and that branding. And like I said, that's where I hope comes from. If you can, I'm an eternal optimist. I believe no matter whatever happens, there's always something good if you wouldn't have enough faith, enough patience, and as peel back the layers, you can find the gift in that problem. And the election is, to me, right now is no different.
Yeah, so I know we're close to the top of the hour. There are just two things I want to say, really more as introductions to something that we'll be talking about for the coming months that I think are really important. One is a global movement, not in every single country, but in many countries, towards authoritarianism and autocracy. And what's behind it in most places increasingly are very, very, excuse me, wealthy individuals, right? Like the Elon Musks and the Peter Thiels and the others from Silicon Valley, who want power for whatever reasons, even though they have no experience with governance per se. They want power, and it's happened in what we used to call Eastern Europe. It's happened in South America, happens in parts of Southeast Asia, and it's happening here. So they're the guardrails that were in place in 2016, including some of the people who Trump selected as his cabinet, were more or less mainstream military folks. Even someone like Rex Tillerson, who was the CEO of ExxonMobil, not my favorite person, but knows governance and wants the country to go in a continually capitalist democratic direction, which has its own issues. That's all gone now. Trump is, the only loyalists are getting appointed. The Supreme Court has shown that it's not particularly objective, as have lower courts. So some of the guardrails to democracy are no longer as strong as they once were. And some people, I don't know who they're going to be or how it's going to happen. Some people are going to suffer because of that, because the democratic process, what keeps it democratic, is weaker than it was 8 years ago. That's one. And it's something, we're going to get more nuanced and detailed with. The second, which is this, for me, the scariest thing, and I'm just going to mention it quickly now, what's known as the meta crisis, and I think you and I may have touched on it briefly once or twice, is the name given to a cascading series of global crises that are interrelated and that literally no one knows how to resolve. People think climate change is the one thing that needs to be resolved, and it is. It's an existential threat. But it's really the thought process and the approach to resolving issues that has been part of modernity for, over 100 years now, which continues to create issues and then takes a real short-term, narrow approach to resolving them and creates more issues. If Harris had won, the Democratic Party at least would recognize that climate change and global warming are real. And that's one little piece of this meta crisis. With a Trump administration, they not only don't talk about any of that, including climate change, which you say is a hoax, their policies continue to deepen all that leads to the meta crisis. So in the next 4 years, if Donald Trump gets through 4 years and doesn't resign or lose his mind or whatever happens, whatever else might happen, the meta crisis is going to continue. The planet will continue to suffer. There will be more horrific floods, more horrific storms, more horrific fires. The oceans will continue to rise. There will be more mass migrations and refugees, and that will lead to unrest in various places. Now, that's scary because the current leadership or the coming leadership doesn't believe in any of it. And in fact, the leaders that they want to bring in really make it worse. So those are two things, this autocratic, authoritarian movement around the world and the reality of a meta crisis are two things that we have to keep a close watch on. Even though they're global issues, America is allegedly a global leader and is both impacted by these things and in many ways helps these things continue to be problems. So I hate, that's kind of a downer, I know, but it's real and it's true. And I think it'd be something that we'll be talking about in the coming months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And as you said, we reached the top of the hour now. So what do you see as some next steps that we can keep our sanity and continue to move forward? Yeah, fully human.
I'm going to go back to something that we've mentioned today, and you and I have spoken about a lot in the last 2.5 years. For people who really care about other human beings, I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to say Americans or globally or whatever. If you really care about other human beings and you don't think they should be dehumanized or cast aside in any way, watch your language. Do your best to avoid exacerbating or beginning us versus them language. Now, I'm not being naive here, right? You have two football teams playing, it's us versus them. You get that. Okay, cheer for your team. All right. You want to win an election, it's us versus them. But I'm saying, remember that the them in these very specific instances are other human beings who also want to live a life that's as free of suffering as possible. They want to be able to feed their children, maybe take a vacation, and live kind of okay. So lose the us versus them dehumanizing move when you talk politics, religion, whatever. Just lose it. Catch yourself demonizing others. Disagree? Yeah. Engage in civil discourse and debate? Absolutely. But stop the dehumanization. I think that's it's a real base level starting point that anybody can do in any party or lack of party.
All right. And as we wrap up our show, we like to give an example of someone who we feel has exhibited fully human characteristics, whether they're past or the present. And I'll throw the microphone over to you, see if you have anybody in mind that you want to lift up.
It's better if you go first right now. I'm coughing.
Okay, I'll go first. Well, the person that comes to my mind this morning, and I thought about this. I don't know if I mentioned his name before, but I'm going to say it now. Stevie Wonder. And Stevie Wonder is a singer, songwriter, advocate who's been singing since he was a child, phenom as it relates to talent. But just looking at his body of work, the songs that he's sang, what he's done from a humanitarian standpoint. One of the reasons I want to highlight him now is one of the songs that he's written so many beautiful songs that can really help you deal with crisis and stress and pain in your life. One song in particular that I've always felt was a very powerful song, and I think it's very poignant right now, is Love is in Need of Love Today. Love is in need of love today. And that's a very beautiful song. That's where I believe we are right now. We're in a situation where we need to look for love right now. I know it's tough to look for love where there's so much propaganda and misinformation that's given to us by the media. You keep buying that with the fact that folks are dealing with the economic impact of what the economy is right now. Again, I'm talking about what people are feeling, not what the numbers are economically, what people are feeling in their own pockets right now. I know it's tough, but to me, the flip side of it, the opposite of that, is hate, divisiveness, and I believe most people don't want to live around their energy source. So I'm gonna lift up Stevie Wonder for his contributions to the world.
Yeah, great, love it. So I'm going to mention somebody that I have mentioned in the past. It's one of the two senators in Connecticut who was up for re-election this time around, Chris Murphy. He's been a real strong voice for common sense gun legislation. He was a senator during the Sandy Hook slaughter, but he doesn't take any corporate money, and he only takes small donations from his constituents. And he won by about 12 percentage points in Connecticut. Again. And they get criticized, and the ads are against him and all that, us versus them stuff. But I have a lot of respect for him. As with all the candidates, I got way too many requests for money, which drives me crazy. But Christopher Murphy has represented the people of Connecticut well, first as a member of Congress, and then now as a senator. And so I have a lot of respect for Chris Murphy.
All right. Yeah. Excellent. And as we bring our show to a close, we want to thank everyone for listening to us, for being able to be with us today. If you listen to us live on a Monday, next week we'll work to get back on Wednesday. I know I'm having some personal doctor issues, appointments. It's conflicting with the Wednesday schedule. I'll see if I can try my best to schedule around that. But I thank everyone for listening. Thank you, Reggie, for being present, fight through your coughing, and willing to join us today. And be give us your 100% as you normally do. And I want to just thank everyone who is still alive, still has hope. I'm going to face these next 4 years with attitude of we're going to do our best to survive and continue to be fully human through it. And I think if everybody continues to adopt that mentality, then we'll get through it and come out as better humans on the other side and learn from these lessons. Until next Wednesday, hopefully at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as I always strive to be fully human. Thank you.